Coming up in the nationwide world at noon for this afternoon, Friday, November 6, 2020. Democratic candidate Joe Biden has taken over the lead in Pennsylvania in the biggest news so far in the U.S. presidential elections. Chairman of the PNP's Internal Monitoring and Appeals Committee, Norman Minard, says despite some over-enthusiastic supporters using social media inappropriately, the campaign has been positive. Jamaica records one more death from COVID-19 over the last 24 hours, bringing the country's death toll to 218. In international news, the Trump administration has imposed sanctions on a top Lebanese politician whom it has accused of playing a major role in corruption in the country. And in sports, Waterhouse coach blames long COVID-19 layoff on his team's 3-1 defeat in Kingston last night, which knocked them out of the CONCACAF League. The details after the break.
News. It's got to be Nationwide 90 FM.
With the details, I'm Marjorie Gordon. In the biggest news so far today in the U.S. presidential elections, Democratic candidate Joe Biden has taken over the lead in Pennsylvania. Biden is now leading in all 4 key states. Along with Pennsylvania, he is leading in Nevada, Georgia, and Arizona. The Democrat still has 253 Electoral College votes, while Republican Donald Trump has 214. To win the White House, a candidate needs 270. Tana Thomas reports.
At news time, Mr. Biden was leading in Pennsylvania by nearly 7,000 votes. Over 100,000 mail-in votes are still left to be counted in the key state. 95% of expected votes are in. Over in Georgia, 99% of votes have been counted. Mr. Biden is leading by just over 1,500 votes, and the race is too close to call. In Nevada, he's leading by over 11,000 votes. In Arizona, Mr. Biden is ahead by just over 43,000 votes. ABC's special correspondent, Nate Silva, says there's not a path back to secure a win in Pennsylvania for Mr. Trump.
It's very solid. I do not think there's a path back for Trump. So far, these are all mail votes that are being counted. They've gone about 4-1 or 3-1 for Biden statewide. If you have them go 3-1 the remaining votes, he'd be up by about 70,000 votes or about 1 percentage point. There are also provisional ballots in Pennsylvania where in Pennsylvania, if you are sent a mail ballot, you say, I don't trust that to be counted. I'm going to go vote in person. It's a provisional vote. Those are very, very Democratic this year because Democrats were scared their votes wouldn't be counted. Those have not really been included in the count so far, so that will further increase Joe Biden's lead. I think there is not a path back for the president.
But Republican Senator Patrick Toomey says Mr. Trump still has a pathway to victory in Pennsylvania.
I don't know how it's going to turn out, but there is certainly still a path for the president. First of all, it's an extremely narrow lead.
Meanwhile, the ABC's Mary Bruce is reporting that the Biden camp is very encouraged by what it's seeing as the counting continues.
We heard Joe Biden come out yesterday and all but declare that this race is over, and they are now extremely encouraged by what they are seeing in Georgia, and all eyes here this morning are on Pennsylvania. They predicted that we would see them growing in a lead actually at about this time, even based on their internal data, and they are extremely encouraged by what they are seeing. That said, they are continuing to urge patience.
And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is asserting today that the Biden-Harris team will win the White House.
I am so officially pleased with the outcome that is imminent, and also personally delighted because of the quality and caliber of leadership that Joe Biden will provide. This morning it is clear that the Biden-Harris ticket will win the White House.
Tana Thomas for Nationwide News.
Meanwhile, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who during her press conference called Biden president-elect, says he has a strong mandate to lead.
His election is historic, propelled by the biggest vote ever in the history of our country, 73.8 million and counting Americans, the most votes ever received by any presidential ticket in history. President-elect Biden has a strong mandate to lead, and he'll have a strong Democratic House with him and many Democrats in the Senate. This has been a life-or-death fight for the fate of our democracy, as he says, the soul of our country. We did not win every battle in the House, but we did win the war.
Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. A U.S. professor at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government is dismissing claims by U.S. President Donald Trump about vote and election fraud. In a media briefing last evening, Mr. Trump said illegal votes were being used to try and steal the election from Republicans. He claimed to have proof but did not provide any evidence to substantiate the irregularities being alleged. The U.S. president is also alleging election interference on the part of entities he's describing as big media and big money. Professor Richard Parker is also senior fellow at the school's Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics and Public Policy. He was speaking on Nationwide this morning with Daniel Archer and Wayne Walker.
The comment by President Trump that the votes mail-in and the absentee ballots were illegal, is that really true?
No. Next question.
He says there are state laws that allow governors to cast a ballot where there are rogue electors.
By January 20th, we have to have a president, and there are mechanisms in place, some constitutional, some post-constitutional, that set out the steps by which that can happen. One of the irregularities, which actually I think President Trump is perhaps hoping will be irregular, is that the fact that a popular vote shows candidate X does not in turn in many of these states bind the actual electors to vote for candidate X. So we have had in the past rogue electors who've chosen to vote for candidates of their choice rather than what the voters have chosen.
Professor Parker says different states in the U.S. have different standards for determining vote.
We've had a long series of struggles that all emerge in part from the fact that we don't have single national standards for making these decisions.
Do you anticipate that there could be some uncertainty now coming out of the Electoral College?
Yes.
So what would that mean then?
There are what seem to be some clear guidances in federal law, which required that then would turn to the House of Representatives to choose the president and Senate to choose the vice president.
Professor Richard Parker, lecturer in public policy at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. To local politics now, Chairman of the People's National Party's Internal Monitoring and Appeals Committee, Norman Minot, says despite some over-enthusiastic supporters using social media inappropriately, the campaign has been positive. Southeast St. Anne Member of Parliament Lisa Hanna and South St. Andrew MP Mark Golding are to face off in the party presidential election tomorrow. Stephen Simmons reports.
Mr. Minot says both campaigns have made great efforts to adhere to the party's code of conduct.
By and large, I think that it has gone pretty well. There's a code of conduct that is governing the conduct of both campaigns and both candidates. And I think that they have taken it quite seriously and made a serious attempt to abide by the code. The problem is that there are some over-enthusiastic supporters on both sides, primarily in social media, that have acted in a manner which is inconsistent with the code, and I dare say inconsistent with the wishes of the candidates.
He referred to the circulation of a disturbing voice note from a professed Hannah supporter. Both camps have condemned the voice note.
We have received a copy, yes, and I've heard it myself. We're going to deal with it. There is a separate body. We are the Monitoring and Appeals Committee. There is a separate committee that deals with discipline, and I don't think I need to take that any further.
He says the other committee is deliberating on at least one other matter of complaint. Mr. Minot says his committee has also had to remind persons from both camps about the party's code of conduct, and he says they've responded positively to those reminders. There are concerns that the internal contest could further divide the already disunited political organization. But Mr. Minot says he doesn't think it will.
Yes, people have been enthusiastic, but it is clear there are sufficient signs out there that both sides want this thing to work, that both sides want the party to unite. So in the overall, despite the enthusiasm, and in some cases a little excessive, I don't think that the election is going to drive a further wedge. A lot of work to do to bring it back together, but all in all, I don't think it is going to prove to be a negative.
And he had this advice for delegates, as well as the winner of tomorrow's presidential election.
My advice to all the delegates is get out there, vote early, try to avoid any rain that we may have in the afternoon. We're closing off at 3 o'clock. Insofar as the winner is concerned, a big job to do. Both candidates have indicated they want to unite the party. So the winner, your first job is to start, hopefully you have the plans in place already, to start implementing the plans. A great party, and when united, we are an awesome force.
Stevie Ann Simmons for Nationwide News.
There has been one death from COVID-19 over the last 24 hours, with the country's death toll now at 218. This is according to the Ministry of Health's latest COVID-19 clinical management summary. The ministry has also confirmed 53 cases in the latest test results. 639 samples were tested in the last 24 hours. This brings the total number of cases to 9,426. According to the ministry's latest advisory for November 6, majority of the cases are from St. James. 15 cases were recorded in St. James. This is followed by Kingston and St. Andrew with 8 cases. St. Anne recorded 7 cases, while Hanover recorded 6 cases. Trelawney recorded 5 cases, while St. Catherine and Westmoreland recorded 4 cases each. Manchester recorded 2 cases, while Clarendon and St. Elizabeth recorded only single cases. Portland, St. Mary and St. Thomas recorded no cases. The ministry says 56 more people have recovered, bringing recoveries to 4,801. There are 4,281 active cases. In the meantime, 76 people are hospitalized, 18 are moderately ill, and 6 are critical. State Minister in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Dr. Norman Dunn, says while the nation diversifies its economy, it must also strengthen tourism linkages to secure more benefits from the sector. He was addressing a media conference for the launch of an Exim Bank forum aimed at helping small and micro enterprises pivot during the COVID-19 pandemic.
We want to ensure that the linkages that makes this great industry hub of tourism thrive in Jamaica, for the world, the continent benefit, is to ensure that what underpins it, which is the linkages, the small manufacturer, the agro-processor, the service industry, is in fact there to grow it. So diversification is important, but we want to ensure that what we also have, the linkages are there so that we can get far greater benefit from it.
He says there are several other products and industries emerging.
But yes, we believe that Jamaica has much more to offer than sunset and sand and tourism. And you'd have noticed, even in just visiting a pharmacy or a supermarket, and you look on the shelves, you can see the emergence of so many other new products that are world-class standards. And some of the agro-processing that is coming out of Jamaica, they are of world-class standards, and we want to salute the new and emerging manufacturers, producers, and providers of services that they are in fact diversifying on their own.
Dr. Dunn is urging small businesses to adjust to their business models to thrive even during the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic.
If we do not adjust our business model, if we do not adjust what we do generally, then we're going to be left behind. And we can't afford that. We have to live with this pandemic. There will be an end, but it's how we adjust ourselves now to ensure that when the end comes, we are so prepared that we will be at the forefront of the new surge in either manufacturing, in production, in export, and in our productive capacity as a people. Jamaica has some of the best creative talents in the world. We will have to harness that talent.
Dr. Norman Dunn, State Minister in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. Overseas now, the Trump administration has imposed a sanction on a top Lebanese politician whom it has accused of playing a major role in corruption in the country. The measure targets Jabran Bassil, head of the Free Patriotic Movement, a Christian party allied to the powerful Shia movement Hezbollah. It comes at a time when Lebanon is in deep political and economic crisis. The country has been in turmoil for months, facing mass protests, the COVID pandemic, and a devastating blast. Demonstrators have taken to the streets across the country demanding a complete overhaul of its political system, which is widely seen as perpetuating corruption and ineffective governance. And that's the news. Sports is next.